Hey everyone, and welcome back to Roadside Coder, and welcome to the 11th video of our MERN Stack Tutorial Series. And in today's video, we are finally going to add Redux in our MERN Stack application. We're going to see how we can add Redux for state management in our React.js apps and create the store for our application. We're also going to see how you can call the backend API by using actions of Redux. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now before we dive into this, let us understand the different terms used in Redux. So first one is a store. As mentioned earlier, a store is one common place for all of our application state. That is, whatever the state of our application will be, it is going to be stored inside of this Redux store. Second one is reducers. Now reducers are responsible for directly manipulating or changing the state of our application. It is basically a function that takes the current state and action as arguments and returns a new state results. So basically the thing is, reducers are directly responsible for updating or manipulating the state of our app. So we cannot update our application's state without using reducers. Now the third term is called action. You can think of an action as an event that describes something that happened in the application. In other words, action tells the reducer what to do and how to manipulate the state. So a basic action looks something like this. It has this type and it has the payload. So type tells us what action we're supposed to perform next, and payload contains the data that is going to be transferred to the reducer. You'll understand along the way as we implement our app later. For now, just try to understand all of these terms. So it consists of a type variable that tells the reducer to perform a task, and an optional variable payload which contains the data which reducer uses to manipulate the state. Redux uses a special kind of add-on called middleware to let us customize the dispatch function. In this tutorial, we will later understand a middleware called Redux Thunk, which allows us to write action creators that returns a function instead of an action. So as you can see, we are calling different actions inside of a same function. You can see here's the first action and here's the second action. So this is what a middleware called Redux Thunk helps us to do. So we're gonna understand that later. Let me remove that for now. Alright, so let us understand the working of this application, or working of our Redux application. So whenever we want to make a change in the state, we don't directly manipulate it with the help of our application. What we do is we call the action to give info to the reducers by using something called useDispatch hook. So we call our actions, then we provide it a type and a payload. So action checks the type of this request. The type is called perform task. So it's going to go to the reducer with the name of perform tasks, and it's going to pass it the payload of learn Redux. Therefore, these actions are directly called from the code. Now, reducers are the commands to manipulate the state. After the action passes everything to the reducers, reducers start manipulating the state the way we requested it. Now, when our store or our state is manipulated with the help of reducers, we're gonna call it by using something called useSelector hook. So we can call it directly from here. We can fetch the data inside of our state. So this was the flow of our Redux application. First of all, we call the action to perform some tasks. Action checks those tasks and sees what type of reducer it needs to call. So it checks that the type is perform tasks. Okay, so it's going to call the reducer with the name of perform tasks, and it passes it the data in the form of payload, and that data is then used to manipulate the store. And then we fetch all of those things directly into our application. Now don't worry if you are unable to understand what I'm explaining right now. You'll understand along the way as we go on to implement it in our app. So if you haven't worked on Redux before, I would highly recommend you to go and watch this video. After watching this video, you will have a clear understanding of Redux and how you can implement Redux in our React application. Because in this video, I'm gonna go a little bit faster. So if you have a little bit prior knowledge of Redux, so you're gonna be able to work a little more efficiently with this video. So I would highly recommend to go and watch this video and have a clear understanding of what Redux is and how we can use Redux with our React app. So now that we have understood the flow of our Redux application, let's go on and install Redux in our React application. So I'm gonna go to our terminal and switch to our front end, and I'm gonna install npm install React Redux, and our middleware, that is Redux thunk. So this React Redux library is specifically built for React apps so that we can efficiently use Redux with React.js. Alright, so our dependencies have installed successfully. Let's start our server now. So I'm going to type npm start. Also, I'm going to start our backend as well so that our app doesn't break. So let's go to our backend and type npm start. So we are currently in the root of our folder. There we go. Our server has started. Let's see if our frontend has started or not. Okay, it's still starting. Alright, here it is. Our app has started. Now let's go on into our front end folder and start creating our store. So I'm going to right click and create a new file called store.js. Alright, so inside our store, we're going to import a few things. So import something from Redux. So what are the things that we are going to import? First one is the create store. Another one is combine reducers. And the third one is apply middleware. So create store is for creating our store. This function is for creating our stores. Combine reducers will help us combine all of our reducers into one unit, into one single reducer. And apply middleware will help us to add middleware to our application. So next thing that I'm going to import is the middleware itself. So Redux thunk. So thunk from Redux thunk. Alright, so that's all we're going to need for now. So let's create our reducers. So const reducer equals combine reducers. So try to understand what I'm doing right now. Otherwise, if you want to understand Redux in depth, I've explained the whole React Redux in this video. You can just quickly go and watch that video and then come back to this video to continue with it. Alright, so let's inside of it, let's just write this will contain our reducers. After that, we need to create our initial state of the application. So const initial state will be, let's say it will be empty for now. And let's add the middleware. So I'm gonna type middleware. And what middleware do we need? We're gonna need a thunk. And finally, we're going to create our store. So const store. Inside of it, we're going to add a few things. So we're gonna add inside of the create store. We're gonna add first of all our reducer, our initial state, and third, we're going to add our middleware. So apply middleware, and all of the middleware are going to be inside of it. Currently, we're just having one middleware. So yep. And let's export the store. So export default store. There we go. So we have set up the store for our Redux app, our React Redux app. So let's go on and add the provider, something called provider to our app. Oops, I made a mistake. So I have to create this store.js inside of the src folder. So I created it outside of it. So now it's good. Okay, so now that we are exporting our store, let's import it inside of our index.js. So we're going to wrap our application with something called provider. So provider, let's import the provider from React Redux. Import from React. Okay, let's go on over here. Yep, there we go. We have imported the provider and we're going to give it our store. So store equals store. Yep, there we go. Store is also imported here. So now it should work. But how do we know if it's working or not? We need to install a browser extension to check if it's working or not. So I'm gonna quickly stop our app and I'm going to install something. So npm install Redux Devtools extension. So this is for our application, but for the browser, let me show you. If you go onto the Chrome and type Redux Devtools extension, yep, there we go. So you can go over here, Redux Devtools, and you're gonna find this extension right over here. So it's after you install it, it's gonna look something like this. It's gonna have this icon on top of the tab of your browser. Let's get back. So here we go. Our Devtools extension has successfully installed. So let's restart our app. And also let's just go to our store.js and apply our extension. So I'm gonna cover this apply middleware with compose with Devtools. Okay, so it's not auto importing. Let me just import this. Import from Redux Devtools extension. Let's try to import it again. Yeah, there we go. It has successfully imported. Let's check after our app has started if the Redux is working fine or not. There's our app, and you can see this icon has turned green now. So if we click on it, you can see we have this pop-up box for Redux, and it shows you all of our actions, our state, and everything like that. So let's get down to configuring Redux with our React app. I'm gonna create 3 folders over here. First one will be for our constants. Other one will be for our reducers, and the third one will be for our actions. So inside of our constants, we're gonna add a new file for user constants .js. So what are the constants? So let me just go on and create reducer first, then I'll explain you what the constant is. So I'm gonna create a new file over here called user reducers.js. Okay, so inside of the reducers, I'm gonna create our first reducer. So export const user login reducer. So we have, in our previous video, we have added the authentication in our application, but we're not managing that authentication with the help of Redux. We're just adding it just right over here. If you go on login screen, you can see we're just dumping everything inside of this login screen, which is not a clean code. So we're gonna use Redux for this. So let's create a reducer. So this reducer is going to have 3 constants. Also, it's gonna take 2 parameters. First one is the state, and the other one is the action. So inside of our reducers, we're gonna add a switch, and switch is going to take action.type. So what type are we going to fire off? So first case will be for user login request, second will be user login success, and third will be user login fail. So first user will be requesting for the login, inside of which it's gonna show the loading, and when it succeeds, it's going to add the user info inside of our Redux state. Otherwise, it's going to fail and it's going to add the error inside of our user state. So first case will be user login request. So I don't want to add the strings over here because maybe we need to reuse these constants somewhere. So I'm just gonna go on and copy this up and create another separate file for our user constants. So here it is. I've created 4 constants for our user login requests. So first one is for login, then success, then fail, and the fourth one is for logout. So let's test this out. So I'm gonna import it over here. Okay, it's not importing right now. So let's try to import it. Yep, there we go. So what's gonna happen in user login request? It's gonna return loading. It's gonna return loading to true. Then the second case will be for user login success, and the third one will be for user login fail. What's gonna happen in success? It's gonna succeed and it's going to take whichever the thing that it's sending from the action. So from inside of the action.payload, userInfo action.payload. There we go. Otherwise, it's going to take the error. Instead of user info, it's going to take the error. Just like that. And if the user is trying to log out, so it's going to have another case for user logout, which will be to return an empty object. Just like that. And inside of our default, we're just going to return our state. Alright, now let's go on and add this reducer in the lists of our reducers. So inside of the store.js, let's add this reducer over here. So user login will have a reducer of user login reducer that we have created. Let's import it. Yep, just like that. And now let's go to our browser and see if it's reflecting there or not. So if you go on over here inside of the state, yep, you can see user login state has been created. Great. Let's create the action for our reducer. So inside of our actions folder, I'm going to create a new file, user actions.js. So what are we going to do inside of this user actions.js? So this is what we're going to do. So inside of the screens, in our login screen, what have we done to log in the user successfully? We have created this submit handler function. Inside of it, we have written this logic. So we're going to take this logic to that file. So let me go on over here and quickly write that logic. All right, here it is. I've written it. Now, don't worry. I'm going to explain what I've written over here. So first of all, you can see we have created a function called login. And this is a weird looking function. You can see we have our params over here and it's taking another function as a callback, or it's returning another function. So this is made possible by using Redux Thunk. Redux Thunk enables us to do this, that we can nest our functions in one inside of the other. So first of all, what are we doing over here? We have added this try catch over here. So first of all, we're using this dispatch keyword to call a reducer with user login request. So first of all, we're using user login request. So what is it going to do? It's going to return loading equals true. After that, it's going to move forward and make the API request to log in the user. If it's successful, then it's going to call user login success, which will in turn populate our user info with action.payload. See, we are sending the payload. We are sending the payload with the data of user received. Okay, and then we're going to set the local storage to user info. All right, but what if it failed? If it fails, it's going to call the user login fail reducer, and it's going to set payload to the error. So error is going to be inside of the response, error.response.data.message, just like we have done earlier. So this is how this action is going to look like. Okay, cool. So let's go on to our login screen and add all of this logic. So I'm gonna quickly go on over here and remove this completely. Let me just put this submit handler empty, and I'm gonna remove this loading and error state that we have created. We don't need them anymore. So to implement the login, what are we going to do? We're going to take the dispatch from a hook called useDispatch. So we're going to import useDispatch from React Redux. Also, let's just get rid of this Axios and stuff. And one more thing, I can see a few error in our app. So let me just fix that real quick. I think inside of our user actions, we haven't imported all of this stuff. User login fail, constants, and user login success, and Axios as well. Okay, let me manually import the Axios. So import Axios from Axios and user login request. There we go. Also inside of the login screen, we need to import useDispatch from React Redux. So just like this. Yep, useDispatch. Okay, so we're gonna use this dispatch to call our user actions. You're gonna see in a minute how I do that. And now we're gonna use something called useSelector to access our state. So what is our state called? What is the name of the reducer? So user login. So we have taken our state inside of the user login, and let's destructure out our variables from this state. So user login. So what do we need? We need loading, we need error, and we need user info. Okay, so all of these things are what we're going to need. Also, let's import useSelector from React Redux. Let's see if it's if our app is giving any error. Okay, it's we're good. And now we're going to call our action. So dispatch. What was the name of our action? Login. So let's import it. Yep, there we go. It's imported. And we need to send it email and password. So go on over here. You can see we're taking email and password over here to make the API call. So just like that, and I think we're good to go. We're gonna use this user info to assign to our local storage. No, that's already been done. We're gonna use this to route to our notes page if the user is already logged in. So I'm gonna add use effect. So inside of it, I'm gonna check if there's something inside of the user info. Then history dot push to my notes. And inside the dependency array, we're gonna add the history and user info. So whenever the user info changes, it's gonna call this use effect function. So now let's go on and check it out. Enough of the code writing. So I'm gonna go on and try to log in. Submit. Okay, incorrect email or password. All right, also one thing I forgot to do is it's throwing us this error. So whenever it throws us this error, I need to set this loading to false. All right, there we go. Let's try to do this once again. So john@example.com 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let's submit. Yep, there we go. We have successfully submitted our login. And let's try to log out now. So logout is still written in our previous functionality. Let's change the logout next. So our login is working fine. Okay, I have logged out. What's going on over here? I'm trying to log in. Oh, of course, because our logout is not clearing the user local storage. Okay, so let's get down to doing that. All right, so inside of our user actions, I'm going to create another function for logout. So this is the function. So you can see. So we're calling just like before, we're using our Redux thunk to make this nested function. And what we are doing is we're clearing up the local storage and we're calling user logout so it gets cleared from our Redux too. But first of all, let's go on to our Redux. Oops, user logout is not defined. Let me define it. Yep. Let's go back to our Redux and let's see over here. See, since we called the user login request, so you can see all of the actions over here. So in login request, the loading was true, and when the login was succeeded, you can see our state was populated. So let me go to the state, and you can see all of the user details over here. Great. So let's go on and implement the logout functionality. So where are we using the logout? We're using it in our header, right over here. So let's go to our header. Let me close all the files and let's go to src components and header. So over here you can see we have added this functionality in our logout. So let's fix this real quick. On click, we are going to not do this. We are going to call logout handler, which we haven't yet created, but we will create in a moment. So const, first of all, we need to import dispatch from dispatch. Oops, dispatch. Okay. So other thing that we are going to need is use selector, inside of which we are going to take, as usual, our user login state. And all of both of these things are going to be coming from React Redux. From React Redux, let me import them. And it's from inside of it, I'm going to use the user login. So const user info, sorry, not login. From user login. All right, cool. Now let's call our logout. So we have created the function called logout handler. And inside of it, we are going to call our logout action. So dispatch logout. Okay, it's not auto importing. Let me manually import it from actions, user actions. Okay, it shouldn't give any error now. Logout is not defined. Okay. Yep, now it is. And we're going to use this user info to route our user back to our home screen. So we're gonna check. And you know what? Instantly after we have logged out, let's just history.push our user to our home screen. So after logging out, let's just push it to the home screen. Let's try this out. We're gonna go and try to log. Just let's notice the Redux. So I'm gonna go and click on logout, and you can see, yep, user logout, and it has finished. It has cleared our state just like that. Let's try to go to login. Yep, we are on login again. So this is how you can implement the logout with the help of Redux. Let's go on and do similar stuff to our registration as well. And again guys, if you're not able to understand, I would highly recommend to go and watch that video of Redux. I'm stressing it again and again so that you don't feel blank while understanding this. So let's go back to our constants, and I'm going to add the registration constants. So user registration request, user registration success, and user registration fail. Okay, let's go on to our reducers and create the reducer. So the reducer, user reducer. And I'm going to create the reducer real quick, just like that. So what's going on over here is it's taking state and it's taking the action, and the again similar thing, it's requesting user registration request, then the loading is true. And if the user registration is successful, the loading will be false and user info will be action.payload. If it fails, then also loading will be false and the error will be set to action.payload. Let's quickly go on and create our action. It's going to be similar to what we have done in our login, in the registration screen. So just like this, what we have done over here, but we're going to take all of this logic to our actions. So inside of the user action, I'm going to create a new action. But first, let me just add this reducer that we have created right now to our store. So inside of the store, let me add user registration, user register, and user register. Yep, there we go. Let's check it out. So all of this stuff, let me fix this first. So I haven't imported all of these three. Let's see. Yep, there we go. It has imported. Now it should not have a problem. Let's see. Yep. Let's go to the state. Yeah, there we go. We have user login state and user register state. Great. So let's go on and create our user action, user registration action. All right, let me explain what I've done over here. So first of all, we have created this function register and I'm exporting it. And we're going to take name, email, password, and pick from our registration screen. And then we're doing it the same thing. With our Redux thunk, we are taking this nested function and returning this from inside of it. And we added a try catch block over here. So first we are pushing the user registration request so that it starts loading just like this. And then we're gonna make the API call. So after the API call is successful, it's gonna call user registration success, which will populate our user info and set the loading to false. And also after the registration is successful, what we want is we want the user to log in successfully. So we're calling user underscore login success and we're setting the payload to the data that we have received over here. And like the usual, we're setting the local storage. And if it fails by any chance, then we are setting the error. We're calling the user registration fail. But wait, I've made one mistake. I've realized that I've made one mistake, that inside of our store, in our initial state, I think we should fetch the user state from our local storage so that whenever user comes back, it should fetch all of this stuff from the local storage. So let me just write that real quick. So let's icons user info from storage will be local storage dot get item, which is user info. If this exists, then it's gonna parse it by json.parse local storage get item and it's going to convert it to an object. Otherwise, it's going to return null. Just like that. And we're going to pass it inside of our initial state. So user login will have an initial state of user info, and it will be user info from storage. Yep, just like that. So if we go on to our app and okay, let me fix this real quick. So inside of our user actions, I have to import all of these constants. I believe this is already imported. Yep. Import the request. Yeah, there we go. It's working fine. If we refresh our page, there won't be anything inside of our reducer. But if we go, you can see it's null right now. But if we go on and log in, you're gonna see. Submit. So it has submitted successfully. Let's just refresh our app. Let's see if it maintains the state. Okay, it does. Let's see. Yep, it takes it all from the local storage. Great. Let's go on and log out. And let's go to our sign up page. Okay, time to make this working. So I'm gonna go to our register screen. So inside of the screens, registration screen, we're gonna get rid of this error and loading. And inside of the submit handler, we're gonna get rid of all of this stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna pretty much get rid of all of this stuff. And we're gonna do the usual. We're gonna import our dispatch. And take out the user registration, user register state, or reducer, user register. Okay, and inside of the user register, we're gonna take out our loading error and user info, just like this. Now inside of the submit handler, we're going to send it. So first of all, we're gonna check if password is not equal to confirm password. If the passwords are not equal, we're gonna throw an error. Otherwise, we're going to call the dispatch, and we're gonna call the register function, register action. Yep, it has imported. Yep, and we're gonna send our email, our name, email, password, and pick to this. All right, I believe that it should work fine now. Let's add a use effect to push us back to my notes screen. If there's something as out of user info, let's push it to my notes. Yeah, I think this should work. Let's try it out. Okay, use selector is not defined. I think it is defined. Okay, it's not defined. Let me import use effect and use selector. Also, we haven't imported the history from React Router DOM. Okay, we have imported it over here. So why is this giving this error? Okay, it's not giving this error. So let me just get rid of this Axios, since we are not using this over here anymore. Also inside of the user actions, yeah, everything looks fine. Let's try to go and register a new user. So I'm gonna type test user. Test user example.com. I'm gonna type password 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let me go to picture. Let's upload anything. So register. Yep, it has successfully registered. Let's go and check our Redux. Okay, here we go. User register request, user register success, and you can see user login success as well. Great, we have successfully implemented the user authentication with help of Redux in our application. We have successfully added Redux into our MERN Stack application. So thank you all for watching this video. And in our next video, we are going to continue making our backend, and we are going to create the routes to create the node, to update the node, and to delete the node. So stay tuned for that. And if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, so just go to youtube.com/roadsidecoder. And you can click on subscribe button over here. And to access whole MERN Stack series, just go over to the playlist and view full playlist. Also, you can find the link to this playlist in the description. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.